Hi folks, welcome to this video on types of practice. Again, this is one of the essay topics, section B, question 7, whatever you want to call them. Not to be confused with practice methods, okay, depending on which order you're watching these in. Practice methods is how would you set up a session, massed, distributed, varied, would you use mental rehearsal, that kind of thing. Types of practice here is how would you teach or coach an individual skill. So not a session, how would you coach an individual skill? What factors would you take into consideration? There are 3 basic ways of coaching an individual skill, and here they are: whole, whole part whole, and progressive part. So, whole skills, skills taught in one movement, they are skills that are not broken down. I've gone a bit long-winded on the whole part whole method, but to quote Ronseal, it does exactly what it says on the tin. You teach the skill as a whole, you break it down into parts to work on the faults, then you build it back up into a whole again, okay? And finally, progressive part, okay? The skill is taught in parts and then built up into a routine. So you only use progressive part when you're looking at certain types of skills that can be classified as routines. Whenever you get a question, or if they ask you a question on one of these, 2 of these, 3 of these, always give that definition. You've got to make 7 points, give a definition, you've got one of them straight away. Okay, so let's have a look at, when we'd use each type of practice. Right, so classic example of when to use the whole practice method is when you've got a skill such as a golf swing. These are skills that are fast or dynamic, i.e. cannot be broken down. I can't do a whole part whole or a progressive part routine if I can't break the skill down. You can't break a golf swing down and coach it in parts, so we've got to use the whole practice method. It's often used when the skill is relatively simple, okay? i.e. I'm not saying a golf swing is easy, but I'm saying there aren't lots of joints moving in lots of different directions, okay, all at the same time. It's one steady fluid movement. It's also a very time-efficient method of coaching. If I'm not having to break the skill down and I'm teaching it in one go, I'm not wasting time trying to break skills down and then repeat them. So it's a very good method to use when you're short on time. As a result, it's also very good to use with large groups. If I've got a large group, I haven't got the time to break the skill down for every individual performer, so I'll try and teach the skill as a whole. However, I'll generally just try and use whole practice methods with autonomous, decent level performers, because if I've got beginners, they might not be able to handle all of that information in one go. I might have to break the skill down for a beginner a little bit. Even if it is quite a short skill, I might have to try and break it down a small amount so that they can handle it in bite-sized chunks, if you want to think of it like that. However, when is it not quite so good? What is it not good for? Sorry, I just lost my pen a second. With the whole method, it's very, very difficult, for me to work on and isolate weaknesses. Okay? It's very, very difficult for me to do that. But on the plus side, by teaching it as a whole, they've always got my performers a good feel for the movement, its fluidity. It flows very, very well. It doesn't look jerky or put together because they've only ever practiced it as a whole technique. So whole part whole then. Again, this is where I'm breaking down a skill, isolating certain weaknesses, and then building it back together again. I've got a picture of a triple jump here, showing the kind of skill that I would probably use whole part whole practice on as an example. So what can we say about it? Great for skills that can be broken down. Skills that have things called subroutines, i.e. lots of things going on that make up the full performance. So in a triple jump, you've got the run up, the take off, the hop, the step, the jump. There's lots of subroutines that make up a triple jump. So any skill that has subroutines that can be broken down is a great, great time to use whole part whole method. As a result, it's generally done on more complex skills. where if I tried to teach it as a whole, people would struggle to handle that level of information. So by breaking it down into parts, it makes it, turns it into bite-sized chunks that are a little easier to handle. As a result, though, it's quite a time-consuming method. It does take up quite a bit of time to break the skill down, work on faults, and then rebuild it back into the routine. Flipping over to that, it is very good for cognitive performers, beginners who, need the skill to be broken down a little bit to make better sense of it. But again, it's only going to work well with smaller groups. Think about people who coach anyone done gymnastics. You look at the coaching groups in gymnastics, groups of 3 or 4, because you're always, working on bits. Athletics groups, you never get a group of 20 triple jumpers together. You'll get 2 or 3 together because you've got to break the skill down for all of them. They've got to know the subroutines. They've got to be able to work on them. In contrast to the whole method, we can isolate weaknesses. We can work on weaknesses and build them back into the routine. But then there is a cost to that. The cost is that we often lose fluidity. If you're coaching a skill in parts, at some point you've got to put all those parts together. And they might not flow well from what... If you're coaching the triple jump and you've worked on the step phase and you've worked on the jump phase and the hop phase independently, you've then got to put them all together and they've got to do hop, step, jump. They might not flow from one into the other quite so well, and it'll take a bit of time to get that to come off. So there are... Again, you might be sat there going, oh, God, so when would you use each technique? These are the things that these are the decisions that you've got to make as a coach. There are always pros and cons, and you've got to make those calls. These are the factors you've got to take into consideration when you're deciding how to work on a particular type of skill, or type of practice method, sorry. Finally, then, we've got progressive part. And what I've got here is just a picture from Classic Key Stage 1. This is primary school gymnastics. So, remember, we're not always talking about elite athletes when we'd use these practice methods. We're talking about all abilities, all age groups, all sports. So here's years 1 to 2, and you've got there a nice little diagram of a gymnastics routine, stages 1 to 22. And imagine you had to teach that to a group of primary school students. You would use the progressive part method. So we teach it in parts and we progressively add it together. So what you do here is you teach them standing, then you teach them crouch, and then you teach them standing into crouch. You would then teach them the 3/4 forward roll, and then you would go right, standing into crouch into 3/4 forward roll, sorry. Then you'd teach them how to do a teddy bear. And once they'd got that, you'd do right, standing into crouch, to forward roll, into teddy bear. So you'd progressively, you teach each part individually, but then progressively add it on to the parts that they've already done. And that is the classic way that you do progressive part practice. You could argue that you would even do triple jump like that from the previous slide. There's nothing wrong with that at all if you decide that that's the way you want to go. But gymnastics routine, Tom Daly and his dive routines will do it like this. Trampolinists, gymnasts, dancers, they will all use this kind of method to build up their skills. I've just quickly jotted down some familiar phrases here, so hopefully you'll see the common theme running through all of these. When would you use this method? I'm going to use it on routines. I'm going to use it when that's complex. You wouldn't teach that in one go. That's a complex routine, and made even more complex by the year group that you're teaching it to. So you're definitely going to use progressive part when it's quite a complex thing to put together. However, it's time consuming. Teaching that one stage at a time and gradually adding that to that, to that, to that, to that, to that, to that, all the way through, that's going to take time. You're only going to do it with small groups, ideally, because teaching that to everyone, making sure everyone's got it right, make sure everyone's progressing, it's going to be very, it's difficult to do with a small group, let alone a big group. Something I forgot on the last slide. What's another good reason to do whole part whole? Same with progressive part. Great for controlling danger. If you're coaching bits at a time and pieces at a time, you're controlling the danger very, very well. You're making sure they're nice and safe and secure before you move them on to the next stage. So apologies for that, something I forgot off the last slide. This one, great for cognitive and autonomous. Like I've said, these are cognitive performers, key stage 1, years 1 and 2. These are elite level gymnasts, but equally, elite level gymnasts will not just put their Olympic routine together in one go and practice it. They will progressively add it together part by part, stage by stage. Okay? So what you've got to do on this topic is go, right, look at the question, which one is it asking about, or which two are they asking about? And then, is it an advantages, is it a disadvantages, is it a what factors would you take into consideration question? If it's what factors, you talk about them all. Ability level, the complexity of the skill, the group size, the danger levels, okay? Can the skill be broken down, can't it be broken down? The fluidity issue, okay? If it's the disadvantages, you've just got to look at each one. What's the time situation like? What's the control of danger like? Because again, I forgot danger. With whole method, if I teach the skill in one movement, I maybe increase the danger. So it's not good for dangerous tasks because, I'm teaching it in one go, so I'm less able to control the danger. So you just got to think about all these factors and how they could affect your decision on which method to use. Okay, good luck with it, folks. Hope you found this useful.